So people say that there are three things that are needed to create business success. It's all about timing, creating a product that doesn't have too many competitors, it needs to be new, and also, of course, that you need to have talent. You need to have talent. Well, at Prezi, we had all of them as we started. In fact, we got started with the perfect timing in 2008. Do you remember what happened then? One of the largest economic crises in modern times. People were saying, oh, it's like the 1920s, and you know what that led to. Banks were going bankrupt. In US only, 8.8 million jobs were lost. And then we were saying, well, let's take on just about the biggest companies in the world. You know those. Apple, Microsoft, Google. And of course, we had, sort of talent as well. It was these three guys, which you can barely see behind the chair here. The guy on the right is my co-founder. He's not an entrepreneur, he's a scientist, and he was 6 months away from doing his PhD degree when he got started. The other one is an artist over there. Okay, I was an entrepreneur before, but I was moving to this weird place called Budapest. I mean, would you be able to put it on the map if I asked you to? Okay, some of you, good, good. So you can imagine that we had a lot at stake when we got started. We had to prove to the world that we could do something because nobody really believed us. I had to go 1.5 years without a salary. And what we did was something that some of you might be doing in a few hours. We went to one of these startup competitions. In our case, we went to Amsterdam, to the Next Web, and I got on the stage to finally introduce Prezi. I had 5 minutes, and I wanted to stand out and make a difference, so I put on a suit and a tie, and I said, ties are like slides are. They can be confining and boring. But if you find a way to break loose from the ties and the slides, this whole new world of creativity opens up. And I revealed Prezi, and then after my 5 minutes, I had to get off of this stage, and then the moderator came up and asked the audience, 5,000 people, 2,000, I don't remember, something like that. How many of you would be willing to actually pay for this product? And half of all the people raised their hand. That was really the first moment in time that we knew that we were onto something. And after that, things started to go really fast. And the startup world is a small one, so actually the first thing that happened was that this guy, Robin over here, wrote this article. We only came in second place, but we got this nice TechCrunch mention, and all of a sudden, Prezi started to spread all over the world. And you know that situation with no investor being interested at all in Prezi? Well, I haven't done still one single investor roadshow. In fact, all these people started to come to us. How did they do that? Well, people started to send them Prezis when they were pitching their companies. That's how you solve funding if you're a presentation tool. And the amount of users and the interest in better visual communication exceeded our wildest expectations. Today, over 85 million people have created the world's largest database of publicly available presentations. And that allowed us to do a bunch of other things, like employ people, more than 300 of them working in the company. But it's not even just the jobs at Prezi. It's also experts. It's people who are building businesses on top of Prezi, helping other organizations to transition over from the slides into a more creative world. Over 85 books have been written about Prezi, and this one is pretty fun. Can you see? This is a Korean cartoon in a comic book showing people using Prezi. I love that one. But I didn't love it as much as this one. This is sort of the fanboy moment. Can you imagine me sitting in the audience at TED, looking at this guy talking about how to eradicate poverty? Can you see who that is? Yes, it's Bono using what? Prezi. After that, meeting a president, peanuts. So we're on this journey, taking on Apple, Microsoft, and Google. Who would have known that that journey would land me in yet another unexpected place? Here, with you, in Riga. In fact, Aldis and Alisa, who I met 5 years ago, we started talking about sharing experience already as long back as 5 years ago. Yeah, that's a picture from them on their trip to San Francisco where we met. And we talked about how important it was to actually help the local community where we were from in bringing all the talent to a world stage. But it wasn't that conversation that led us to think that Prezi should acquire Infogram. It was actually our customers, our users. So during this time, more and more people started to say, hey, we want data visualization inside of Prezi. And what happened for Infogram? Well, in Infogram, people were saying, we want to be able to put these data visualizations into a presentation. That gave us a first clue, but we had never acquired a company before, and we wanted to do it well, and for us, the most important thing was, of course, that these great people in Budapest and in Riga and in San Francisco could work well together. So how do you figure out how to acquire a company when that is your goal? Well, we started using the metaphor of dating, and we dated well over a half a year. We did hackathons together. People were flying back and forth between Budapest and Riga. And you can imagine how happy and proud I was in May when we announced the acquisition and the team had made this cake. Dating that ended with a marriage. And during this dating, we found that actually we had much more in common as these two groups of people than what met the eye initially. In fact, we were a group of people who were motivated by very similar things. Like, for example, helping people to make better decisions through better visual communication. What you see here is a map of real-time data for the UK elections. And obviously, this is an important election not just in the UK, but even in wider Europe. So this is super cool that Infogram can be a part of empowering people to understand how these elections have an effect on their local communities and their broader global perspective. And then, of course, yeah, if you were wondering how many people globally can place Budapest, I think it's a similar challenge, unfortunately, for Riga. So we had that in common as well. How do we bring to the world an understanding of the amazing talent that exists in these places? Last but not least, although we were globally successful, we had a deep local engagement. What you see here on the pictures to the left is the Prezi team renovating Roma villages for people who don't even have water in their houses. But on the bottom right, you see a renovation here in Latvia with the Infogram team. On the top right, you see Tech Girls Riga. And in Prezi, we have multiple NGOs where we're working with questions of diversity, entrepreneurship, helping young people discover the amazing things in technology. These are really things that brought us together on a deep way, with the teams also getting married. Okay, so the fit seemed nice, and we are now on this journey together to take on Apple, Microsoft, and Google. But I'm suspecting that for many of you, when I'm standing here on stage and talking about taking on Apple and Microsoft and Google with hundreds of thousands of employees combined, that seems a little bit ridiculous. I mean, is this guy just crazy? Or what is he talking about? Well, I'd like to show you one data set that I think is probably the most important data set that you'll ever study as an entrepreneur or in your MBA program. And so if I were to do one of those educational pieces, this would be the one that I'd like to show to people. The average company lifespan of the 500 most successful companies in the world. Let's take a look at that distributed along time, and let's see what happened. Back here, in the 1960s, when my parents were growing up, in order to be among the top 500 most successful companies in the world, it took about 60 plus years to get there. 60 plus years, okay? And then we walk forward to present, and now we see 20-ish, 20 plus, and when we project out, even less. And I'm telling you, this is the most important graph, if you're an entrepreneur, of the day. Why do I say that? What does this mean? I mean, can we make sense out of this? Well, let me give you two examples that I think helps you to understand why I think it's so important. Here, from 2012, is a company that you all have heard of. It was a part of this list, bringing those averages up. Kodak, at the time, a 130-year-old company with infinite amount of experience and infinite amount of resources to tackle photos. But they go bankrupt. 2012 is an interesting year because the same year, another company who's also working with photos gets bought for $1 billion. They're slightly different from Kodak, though. It's a small group of people. They have some, but not much experience. Can you guess who it is? Anyone? Yes. Instagram. Now, what does this tell us? The takeaway message for me is that in today's economy, creativity wins over experience. And that actually creates a very different condition for people from unexpected places. Now, when I talk about creativity, a lot of people get actually nervous. They say, okay, well, creativity, great for those who have it. Unfortunately, I'm not like Steve Jobs, I'm not like Einstein, so what should I do now if creativity is what's needed? And what I proceed to tell people is that even though we colloquially often think of creativity as something you're born with, my experience, having worked with 85 million Prezi users who tend to be on the creative side, is that actually creativity is not a trait you're born with, but it's something that you can practice very easily. It's a way of approaching problems. And in fact, if you can say yes to these three questions, then I believe you have a creative mindset. So what are these three questions? First of all, can you identify and work against your intrinsic motivations? Second, can you make yourself vulnerable? Thirdly, are you able to challenge basic assumptions? If you say yes to this, then I think you have a creative mindset. And the reason why that matters, I'll tell you through an example that I know pretty well, because he happened to study at the same school as I did back in Stockholm. How many of you knows who this is? Somebody? Daniel Ek, I would pronounce it in Swedish. But yes, this is the founder of Spotify. Everyone knows Spotify, yes? No, okay, good. You never know. Okay, good. So that's the guy behind Spotify, yes. He studied at the same school as I did, and I remember him being intrinsically motivated. He loves music. He loves music. Only he had one problem. When he tried to play the guitar, turns out that he sucked at playing the guitar. But being an engineer, he was very decisive in wanting to work with music. Okay, well, that sounds good, but that's not enough. He also made himself very vulnerable. At the time when we were at university and he was studying engineering, a lot of our friends all downloaded music for free. And it was the popular thing to do. But Daniel, he said, actually, I don't think that's completely okay. Yeah, that doesn't make you popular. I don't think that's okay. I think the artist should get paid, and either way, the experience sucks. So he made himself pretty vulnerable for that group of people that we were hanging out with. And then thirdly, he challenged a really basic assumption, which is, why couldn't you have the same model that you have on the radio with ads in between songs, only you do it on the internet, and of course people can choose their own songs to some extent, but that's just a model like any. And before him, no one else had really challenged that assumption. And by applying this creative mindset, Daniel could build this multi-billion-dollar business called Spotify. So that sounds like a good idea. And is it really relevant? Let's see. I'm going to do a secret tech demo for you guys, so I had to do a special setup. Could we get the screen back? Oh, there we go. Thank you. And if it is truly a mindset, is that something that large number of people can apply and change their lives with? I believe so. And I'm sure that you guys by now are freaking tired of the Estonian success example being here, right? I would like for you to consider that maybe there is an alternative interpretation of what really happened in Estonia and with Skype. You know, a lot of people say that, oh, all these engineers, they got all this money and then they started investing into companies, and that's all true. But when you come from a post-communist country surrounded by economically successful other countries, it's hard to believe that you can be competitive, right? And I think what Skype did for Estonia is that for maybe the first time since the change in politics and all of it, people had proof that they could be globally competitive, not through experience, but through creative thinking. And this proceeded to change Estonia throughout the entire country, I believe, to the effect that even politics, as you know, and e-citizenship and all of this stuff was changed. So having a creative mindset is available and accessible for all. And it's something that we do apply at Prezi as well. I want to show you one of our recent creative ideas that took us to a new place with Prezi. And as with tech demos, it's always interesting if everything will work while people are working on the code base at the same time. Let me try to do this. So one of the newest fun things that we're doing at Prezi is Prezi AR. And yeah, here we go. Are you guys ready to see AR Prezi? Okay, good. Now, you may have heard about AR because the speaker in front before me was talking about it, but more likely you've been exposed to it on Snapchat and stuff, right? There. Well, in the case of Prezi, we're not looking to put bunny ears on people, but we're wanting to help people tell great stories. And the way we did the first ever AR Prezi was together with Ted, that we often work with and help great storytellers make their stories even better. And this guy, Dr. Robert Sapolsky out of Stanford, who was explaining to people how a gunman decides to pull the trigger on a gun. Now, actually, this may not be obvious to you guys, but even just looking at myself on the screen with a gun pointed to my head makes me a bit nervous right now. And we had a lot of people who actually shared with us that after Robert's talk, so many of them had goosebumps and things that we could really start to sense that AR does help to tell a more emotional story. And the benefits are others as well. There are other benefits to this as well. Like, for example, Robert, who couldn't go to Vancouver because he didn't want to miss his daughter's musical. So he zoomed onto the Vancouver stage directly from the Prezi office as such, without any really special technologies, because I'm sure you've seen these things that people put up green screens and the weatherman points on the, on the map, is it going to rain tomorrow or not? All we needed was Prezi Next and a laptop such as I'm using right now. Okay. Thank you. And so, if you're still doubting whether we here in Riga, together with Infogram, can take on giants like Microsoft, Apple, and Google, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. One is about this map. You remember the UK map with the live real-time data about elections? Can you guess where that map was actually shown? That's on MSN.com. As some of you may know, is a Microsoft company. That's the reaction I was hoping for. Thank you. You should also know that already the Infogram team, although being much smaller than the original Prezi team, has already won 2 hackathons because of their unique perspective and take on data visualization and communication. And that we're growing the offices here. We just opened up a new floor, and I'm not sure if some people from the Riga team might be actually here in the audience. Is there anyone here? Yeah. Okay, yay. Stand up, guys. Alisa, I can see. Yeah. Welcome. Yay. Maxims, Lauris. So these guys, among with other people back in the office, are tasked to growing not just the team, but also taking on those giants that you just saw. So I hope you guys may actually be a part of it somehow. And I hope if there's one thing that you take away from the story here is really that irrespective of where you happen to be an unexpected place like Stockholm to take on the music industry, Tallinn to take on calls, Budapest for presentations, or Riga for data visualizations. Coming from an unexpected place, we actually have a unique perspective on the world, which actually allows us to think creatively, which also happens to beat experience. Thank you, guys.